My father's places, Mirza Waheed. We're in Kashmir in a large rectangular garden with at least three tall chinar trees presiding over the scene. A thin stream runs along the border of the garden. Cobblestones mark the stream where the grassy ground ends. The Tudor style guest house, called the Dark Bungalow, even though it has nothing to do with the dark or postal service and is considerably larger than a bungalow, sits elegantly near the chinars, just escaping their all encompassing shade. The entrance to the compound is past the maple tree cluster, a path marked by a slatted walkway from the metalled road that goes to the gates of Verinag, the deep spring that is the source of the river Jhelum, whose waters come to fill the stream in the garden. If you walked upstream, you saw its waters branching off from the river that gushes out from the heart of the spring. Behind this tourist guest house, at an oblique angle from the office, the last room in a row of rooms on the ground floor, is the kitchen and pantry setup. There are some staff rooms here too, two painted wooden rooms at most. All of this is green. The rock plinth is green, the wood beams are green. Asghar Ali, the caretaker, lives here. His room so Spartan and frighteningly clean that you fear your presence might despoil something. My father is a staff member. He is posted here, an away posting. My mother and my siblings, three sisters and a brother, have all come along with him to this small mountainside resort far from the city. He often wears crisply ironed pastel safari suits. He oils his hair. It's the early 1980s, a long, pleasant summer in the memory, as vivid and fresh as that winter's high snow. In that summer, or the summers of 1981, 82, and 83, we cavorted in the long garden, rolled on the grass, dipped our feet in the stone-cold spring water, touched cheek to flower, while tourists from Kashmir's main city, Srinagar, or from India, visited or stayed in the rooms of the bungalow. Presiding over it all, the guest house with its own garden that would become ours for brief periods, was the Pir Panjal mountain. Tall, conical, and dense as a forest should be, I thought then. It gave me my first sense of mystery and terror. Qadir, the Chowkidar, took it upon himself to guard and protect Mehdi Sahib, my father's honorific, his family, and every cousin, aunt, or uncle who came to visit us. Qadir, he who escorted father home one night, a glistening axe on his shoulder, when Papa was accosted by the flip-footed female spirit, a rantus, Qadir said, at the gates of the spring. It was said the spirit lured men with a hypnotic call and plunged them into the freezing water. Many years later, at college in Delhi, I would be reminded of her as I read about Homer's sirens in the Odyssey. Asghar Ali, the immaculately dressed, super tidy, forever clean shaven caretaker, loved us, fed us, and deeply cared for my mother. Then there was the orderly Rashid, who walked with me like a shadow sometimes and bowled endless overs so I could bat for long, unbeaten sessions. I went to his house one day and fell in love with the kitchen garden. It looked like it had been painted and then planted into the soil. And of course, there was the tall dandy Pervez, who almost always carried a cassette player around his neck, playing popular melodies from old Bombay films. He wore flared bell-bottoms and ultra-fashionable striped shirts. I wanted to be like him when I grew up. 25 years later, he somehow found his way into my debut novel as a forest-dwelling troubadour who walks the high pastures along with his sheep. There was, of course, a class dynamic at play in the office, especially when the boss was present, my father's boss. But I do not recall an occasion when my father acted superior. It was, in fact, later said that he had the opposite problem, that he was too friendly, too equal with the staff. Father attended to the visitors, asking Abdul Salam, the main chef, Ghulam Nabi, the melancholic housekeeper, Asghar Ali, Rashid, or someone else to do this and that, to make life comfortable for the guests. That was his thing, I know now. to make other lives comfortable. Sometimes I worry that my father ran himself into the ground trying to make the lives of others, starting with his children, more comfortable. In that summer, he must have been a happy man. He had secured the most comfortable accommodation for his family. The boss had agreed to let us live in the family suite. Relatives who visited from the city marveled at our plush rooms. Perhaps it gave us all a sense of pride that they were in some kind of awe. Papa could do stuff for them, for everybody. One day, Aunt F swung with wild abandon atop a sofa in our room, dancing to a disco tune. We laughed and tried to mimic her. She and other aunts and cousins would stroll in the manicured gardens below as though they were on a film set. Or perhaps they actually felt like film stars. I have remained in that glorious garden ever since, going back to it forever in my memory. As a friend said, everyone has an elsewhere, somewhere, that lives and breathes with them in their lives here. But it's my father's place, or it's one of my father's places, where I believe more than ever he was the happiest, because he felt satisfied, adequate to the tasks of his life. He came into his own, and didn't feel cut down as he sometimes did in the city. I am playing with the daughter of a visitor family. She is fascinated by the many nodding flower stalks next to her. Priya or Pia is different. She's from the outside. She brings with her my first sense of the wider world. Papa's colleagues hover in the background somewhere. Not unhappily, as they know generous tips could come their way soon. These are father's men, people he tries to help from time to time, getting Ghulam Nabi a permanent job at last and thus removing the source of his lifelong melancholy, arranging for Qadir and Asghar Ali to be paid a winter allowance, sorting out someone's overdue arrears, and most of all, somehow organizing rent-free staff quarters for the men. They have families too, father says. Then, and forever afterwards, every time he wants to help those in need. As my father lay on his deathbed in Kashmir, his previously alert body and mind ravaged by COVID and its attendant furies, and then as we buried him, as we prayed for him later at home, I thought of the very Nagyas again. As we lit candles on his gravestone a few days later, it suddenly occurred to me that the memoir I've been threatening to write all these years is about him. It's always been about him. Certainly more about him than me. And perhaps that's both the reason I have wanted to write it and the reason I haven't been able to do so. Something was and is unresolved. Then I talked about those summers with my sisters and brother as part of remembering Papa. It wasn't the first time. As I said, I've always thought of that period as life-giving. A few years ago, I went to Verinag again after nearly 35 years and found that both the guest house and the glorious garden around it have turned into rubble. A scene of utter desolation, painful reminders of the long war in Kashmir. The tourists leave the garden. The sunlight slowly gives way to shadows from the large-limbed chinar trees, to the larger shade of the Peer Panjal mountain an arm's length away in the photos. My father says his goodbyes to his guests, having shaken hands with them, having treated them well, gone above and beyond as a host. And there he stands by the wicker chairs in the cool evening light.